Landman may be captivating TV, but part of that comes from throwing logic out the window. The entire series is littered with baffling decisions that make absolutely no sense. The action flies fast and furious when someone strikes a gusher in Landman, but somehow the show doesn't seem to know the first thing about drilling or using oil derricks in the field. As a ton of folks in the industry have pointed out, the wrong terminology is sometimes used when people talk about the job, and different structures are called derricks when they're really other objects. The way they rig workers to use those derricks has also been called into question. One person laid it out on Reddit saying, "The rigs shown are ancient hardware. Some tiny mom-and-pop companies still use spinning chains, but the number of fingers lost to them due to bad communication between the driller and the floor hands caused most to be replaced by power tongs and nowadays iron roughneck units." And okay, yeah, that's kind of a deep cut for the casual fans, but to put all that Landman speak into layman's terms, it would be like if a modern Fast and Furious movie only used 2006 Toyota Camrys. It wouldn't happen. And that's only the cosmetic details. As another person pointed out, a lot of the characters aren't even doing the right job. They said, "Sheridan doesn't know the difference between a drilling crew and production crew. Roughnecks don't work on pump jacks. In my time in the field, I also never saw the whole drilling crew hazing someone to do something dangerous on location. They wouldn't just get run off, but blacklisted. Nobody wants that liability." These small details might not pop out to most fans of the show, but they definitely matter to actual oil professionals.
You keep it stable, and you get it down straight.
I got no idea what you're talking about.
If the equipment itself is wrong, it's probably not too surprising that Landman doesn't always nail its portrayals of how to properly use that equipment while drilling either. Characters have repeatedly failed to use proper masking and guidance or engage in careful behavior. A deleted poster on Reddit called the show out for making multiple mistakes in how it portrays a worker's actions and equipment usage out in the oil fields. It's sort of weird how much they are getting wrong. The show should so easily have been a hit with patch workers, but I just find most every scene extremely cringy to the point it maybe is not made for anyone who has set foot in the field. They've obviously got a great budget, why not get some oversight from someone who knows their shit out there? Other posters proceeded to take Landman to task for using incorrect terminology, using tools wrong, and even the character's dirty hygiene. One of the most frequently revisited themes in Landman is the battle between renewable energy resources and oil discovery. The show comes down solidly on the side of the oil man, often mocking more environmentally friendly sources.
Please, Mr. Oilman, tell me how the wind is bad for the environment.
And while that's something you'd expect from characters who depend on oil for a living, experts have noticed that the renewable energy folks are never given a fair shake in storylines. During episode 3 of season 1, for instance, Tommy goes on a rant about renewable energy, but a lot of the things he says are flat out wrong. Take what he says about wind turbines.
In its 20-year lifespan, it won't offset the carbon footprint of making it.
Newsweek took a deep dive into that claim and quickly discovered it wasn't true. A wind farm actually recoups its carbon footprint within months. A professor in the Institute for Energy Systems and Mechanical Engineering discipline at the University of Edinburgh told Newsweek, "Billy Bob Thornton is very good at portraying a common character that one meets when talking about wind energy. Unfortunately, that character is misinformed and wrong." The part of Tommy's speech where he talks about solar power also had some inaccuracies. For example, while batteries aren't inherently the most eco-friendly and renewable things in the world, they're not worse than gas power sources like Tommy suggests.
And don't get me started on solar panels and the lithium in your Tesla battery.
Oil is a lucrative industry. You don't need us to explain that. But as a high-level executive, Tommy sure doesn't seem to be living the high life. Sure, he has a pretty nice home, but it's not exactly a mansion either. He shares the place with Dale and Nathan, two of his best M-Tech's hands. His ex-wife Angela and daughter Ainsley have also shared space there. When Tommy's father TL shows up, he moves into the house too. That's a lot of people in a pretty small house, and fans think that Tommy would naturally be able to afford more. As one person said, "I find it strange that Billy Bob Thornton apparently is the worst salary negotiator in world history. He seems to be one of the most crucial employees of a massive oil company, negotiates with drug cartels for oil rights and his life, has the CEO on speed dial, etc., and yet lives in a dumpy little house with 2 other guys and is in a mountain of debt." Indeed, Tommy is portrayed as a very astute businessman, which means his continued debt makes no sense. That's worth asking our next big question. How does Tommy, a guy at the top of his game, coveted by drug cartels and oil companies alike, manage to make it through his day-to-day life without losing tons of cash? He's good at being a manager, but is often tripped up when obstacles get in his way. Constant disasters and lawsuits plague the company, and Tommy only manages to make it through by the skin of his teeth.
The world is my oyster, Cammy. What can I tell you?
It makes good drama, but it's not very realistic, to put it bluntly. Ironically, it's his inability to take risks that ultimately messes things up for him, and Cammy ultimately can't ignore that, which leads to her firing him at the back end of Season 2. And then, wouldn't you know it, Tommy manages to pull off a Hail Mary, creating his own company with the help of his family. He also saves 6 oil wells that his son Cooper had initially signed over to MTEX, so despite the odds, things seem to be going smoothly for Tommy. But now he's in bed with a drug cartel. For such a successful guy, he sure knows how to make awful choices.
Is that your legal opinion?
No, that one's from the heart.
Tommy isn't the only one who seems to fly by the seat of his pants. Ainsley and Angela are equally awful at their jobs when volunteering at the old folks' home. They repeatedly flout rules and, in spite of their best intentions, often cause calamity, serving booze to the residents and taking them off on impromptu field trips without telling anyone else.
I bet there's more hanky-panky going on at the nursing home than in your house.
Meanwhile, Cammy is an extremely competent force for working women everywhere, until her entire company walks out on her. Even the ever-unflappable and uber-confident Rebecca manages to get her lunch handed to her legally a couple of times. The show is utterly loaded with fallible people, and that both makes it a realistic outing and a very frustrating watch. It's hard to ignore the fact that Ainsley is something of a walking stereotype. A pretty blonde teenager who also cheerleads, she's sometimes portrayed as being shallow, silly, and promiscuous. In early seasons, she's often seen wearing skimpy clothing in front of her father's friends, uncomfortable stuff to say the least. The show tends to use Ainsley and her mother as eye candy, and while that's acceptable with Angela, Ainsley is just starting to prepare for her college career. To be fair, Ainsley has begun to take on some deeper layers as she grows up. The way she supported her cheer camp roommate against a group of bullies is a promising sign, but it's just one moment of maturity floating in a shallow sea of stereotypes. Because the entire show is written solely by Taylor Sheridan, it's easy to place all the blame squarely on his shoulders. Actually, why is Taylor Sheridan so bad at writing all of these women? His track record in writing female characters can be very hit or miss.
This is the worst spring break ever.
We could go get pedicures.
Even his most lionized female characters, like Beth Dutton on Yellowstone, often end up becoming shrill, hyper-violent, or sexist caricatures on their worst day. Landman suffers from similar problems, with Angela coming off as a strident trophy wife caricature who's vain and likes showing off, Ainsley as the stereotypical popular cheerleader, and Rebecca as the hard-nosed attorney. Occasionally, all three of them are allowed flashes of depth, but those moments are never consistent and often come off as hackneyed.
Seems a little excessive.
Only Cammy and Cooper's fiancée Ariana escape full-out stereotyping, though Cammy can sometimes be simplified into a girl boss and Ariana into a victim. One final Landman thing that doesn't make sense is the way it handled the cartel plotline. Galeno and his men may have a lot of might, but their behavior rarely follows the kind of logic most of us would use here on planet Earth. It theoretically makes sense that they can steal planes, but they also do foolish things like threaten DEA agents on US soil. It's the sort of mixed bag behavior that makes them threatening but not too threatening, a wishy-washy imbalance that makes the whole plotline far-fetched and hard to enjoy. One fan said, "It's a hard-to-believe plot. I think the writer is trying to depict the Mexican cartels as something more than they are." In fact, most of the viewers posting to the Landman subreddit agreed that the plotline seems to be carried out by lower-level members of the cartel, but it also somehow feels fitting that the sometimes incompetent Tommy has managed to align himself with a somewhat incompetent team of mobsters.